When he is not traveling and delivering his message of hope and encouragement, he enjoys watching paint dry. And it also says here that he is attracted to bright, shiny objects. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me to welcome Mr. Bob Keohler. Oh, you're good.
Oh, Ernest, did you get it? Did you hear that? That was funny. That was quite the introduction. Introduced by yourself.
I was introducing myself,
What was
Mark.
that conference about?
The humor conference is now just finished its 13th year. Each year in Hamilton at St. Joseph's Hospital, we have what we call the first Canadian Humor Conference, and the first one was back in 1995, and we've been having the first Canadian Humor Conference for 13 years now. Basically, it's a couple of women who worked in St. Joseph's Hospital who decided that humor was a really important part of people's lives, so we put on this one-day event where people from all walks of life were invited to come, and we would hire presenters who were funny and just reminded people about the importance of laughter and fun, and no matter where your life is at, it's always an important part, an important ingredient. And so we've been having it on an ongoing basis, and I've been the director of ceremonies for all 13 years, and it's quite a blast. Quite a blast.
So you've this has been a constant for you, the uplifting environment of humor.
Correct.
It sounds like you have you've developed a little bit of a technique around this. I don't kind of stumped for how to even approach it.
Okay.
People laugh. They not just ha-ha. They get a physical exertion.
They do.
Of energy.
It's
a gestalt of sorts.
Well, there's a chemical reaction that takes place in people's bodies, and it's healthy for people. Humor is so underrated, and people today, especially a lot of young people today, I don't think understand or know the background of how things, for example, in organizations have evolved over the years. Like, for example, when I started my first job, which is probably back in about 1964, business, for example, was serious. In other words, if you were laughing while you were working, you stood a good chance of being fired. And now we've evolved to the point where organizations promote laughter within an organization. So the workplace has changed so dramatically. I can still remember my first management job, which was probably back in the mid-60s, and people would refer to me as Mr. Keohler or Sir. I mean, you didn't call somebody in a management position by their first name. It was that serious. So things have really, really changed, and I think leaders today try to be known as somebody who's like them. Those are the best leaders in the world, not the ones who stand on ceremony with this position. Because leadership isn't a position, leadership is an attitude. Leadership is a connection with people, that people want to do well because of the kind of leader that you are. That you excite them. You make them want to come back into work the next morning because of the culture that has been created in your particular organization. And that's what I do with organizations. I try to help elevate the emotions and the thinking of people to come to grips with the fact that the most important part of working for a living is to learn how to get to go to work as opposed to have to go to work. Because I'll tell you, the rewards at the end of the day are far different when you believed you had the opportunity to be there as opposed to had to be there.
So if everyone could position themselves, see themselves as being a porn star, and every day that they would wake up, they would do it with gusto, and they would know they were going to work for the betterment of mankind.
Exactly. You got it. Well, you bring up a good point there. I don't know how many of your listeners are budding porn stars, but I will tell you what often happens to people when I talk about getting to go to work as opposed to having to go to work. A lot of people say, but Bob, you know, if you had this job, you could never get to go to work. In other words, people's perceptions of their jobs, they don't realize how important it is. I use a great, well, you know, talked about my quotes earlier. One of my recent favorites is this. It isn't what you do, it's how you do it. You see, some people, like, if you're out socially, if you've ever been out socially and people say, so what do you do? I mean, that's a pretty common question, isn't it? So what do you do? And when people ask me what I do, I usually tell them, I have the absolute best job in the whole world. And the reason I tell them that is because I do. In other words, it's your attitude about what you do that determines how well you do what you do. It also determines whether or not you're excited about your life. But it isn't what you do, it's how you do it. And some people think, well, you know, socially speaking, this isn't very high on the ladder. And so sometimes you ever had people, what they do, and they go, well, I'm just this, or I'm just. In other words, they're demeaning themselves, their position. I mean, I did a talk with a group of caretakers several years ago. And I'm telling you, this was the most amazing group of caretakers that I had ever met. These people loved what they did. They worked for a school board. And they were amazing because they had this attitude about going to work every day. And it wasn't so much their dusting and mopping and cleaning skills that made them excited. It was things like the connection they had with the kids. It was like the cooperation they showed with the teacher. I mean, this was a very unusual group of people, I will tell you. But they loved what they did, and to me, they were extraordinary at what they did. And so if people who can sweep floors for a living can be excited about what they do, you have to ask yourself, what are other people's problems? A lot of people have a job and they feel obligated to do it, so their energy is spent just thinking about going to work, let alone getting there and going through and muddling through it. So, matter of fact, those caretakers, I would guarantee you that some of those caretakers that worked in that school board brought more value to those schools than some of the teachers did. Because you see, we live in a world where there's a lot of people in professions, such as teaching as an example, where people have to go and teach. In other words, these are teachers who have lost their passion for teaching. And it's so sad because what kind of a teaching job could a teacher do if they had to teach as opposed to get to teach?
Yes.
So